Hey everybody, DayTraderRockStar here, and a special Memorial Day watch list, Memorial Day week, going into a shortened week. It is Memorial Day, so happy Memorial Day. We're getting ready for a great week. Tuesday we'll start things off. We'll wait until futures open later tonight and see how things are going. But everything on the charts are looking great. The first thing I want to show you is the S&P 500 chart. And we've been trading this. Typically at Day Trading Radio, we trade what we call high probability setups, and these are stocks and patterns based off of really divergences and a couple other specialized patterns that I like to trade off of. We had one in February, we had one here in the end of March, and we just had one here in May. And again, more on identifying that, you go to daytradingradio.com. That's what I teach over there. But as you can see, we've broken out of this downward channel line. We've come up here, we've flagged out, pushed a little bit higher. These vertical lines really represent 60-minute time frames. If I go to a 60-minute chart, you'll see that these typically point out different areas. But I'm not going to pay attention to those on this. I think the important part is it's just actually seeing the strength that the market has been showing here recently. You know, considering everything that has come and gone with the political landscape and the news and everything, the market is doing a pretty good job. I mean, we're not that far off of all-time highs. We've gone out of this downward channel. We flagged out, we popped, now we kind of flagged out again. You can see this kind of gap up we had last week, and we kind of drifted for the last 5 days, but held on pretty good. So going into tomorrow, I expect actually, unless we have some kind of really bad news out there, I do expect the market to gap up and continue on. It's just a feeling I'm getting that the way that everything is embedded up here, looks pretty good. Everything looks pretty good. So we're going to be working on a market moving higher, and that's where we want to be trading with that market. Now, I already put out our watch list. Our watch list goes out on Fridays to members of Day Trading Radio that represent all the stocks that are setting up on these type of formations, and that those have gone out. But I want to touch base on a couple and put out one of my best bets for this week, so you can see some of the research we do at Day Trading Radio. There's going to be a few small stocks that are going to be in play, which we've been trading over the last few months. VERU, I just want to touch base on this. VERU, a drug stock. They do all kinds of things. They're getting into oncology, cancer research. They're getting into cancer drugs, and they also do a female health and female condom and some other things that deal with all kinds of stuff. I don't want to go into it, because the truth is these stocks, they move around. We're expecting some news out on this. You can see it's holding up pretty good. We had a recent pop here back in September. I think it popped to $3. We got into this back here in January and February down in the dollar and change area, $1.30 to $1.40, 50. Now we're at almost $2, so we have a tremendous gain on it. The question is, where do we see this going? They're going to be presenting at the ASCO Oncology Conference June 1st to the 4th. So I'd like to see this run into that. Today is, again, almost at the end of the month here. So next week we actually have that oncology. So we should see a nice run going into this. And now the big question is, do we take profits going into the oncology conference here, or do we hold on to this looking for bigger and better things down the road? That's up to you. You already have a great profit, and I'm going to look for this to continue to spike, get back over that 220. I have a tremendous amount of shares, so I'll probably end up scaling out up around the 280 level, just to kind of put it out there, just to kind of take a little off and take some profits off the table if we get up to that point. Anyway, that is one of our focus stocks for this week. Another one that I've been watching and I got into last week. It was a cheap stock, penny stock. Typically I don't do these, but they've been in play, and there have been some pretty good news. This one, PRPO, we had some good news, and you could actually see the volume started picking up. We popped, it pulled back, it popped, it's chopping around. Not bad, I'm actually holding some shares of this. And it's a gamble. It's a speculative stock. It could go either way. It could pop it could kind of drift back down. Never know. But just to want to throw that out, we'll be watching this for a trade. And one last, it's kind of a cheapie, $2 stock, AVGR. The news came out, it popped. We were able to actually trade this on that first day it popped, and then got out of it. And now it's consolidating. And, you know, on the pullback, it got back, and I kind of like this area here. Just as a gamble, not an HPS type of setup. Again, they're talking about some stocks, small stocks that could be running this week. It'd be interesting to see if this actually has any further news. We get through that 250 level and off to the races on that. Because you can look where this thing came from. This came from, wow. I mean, you can see where it came from. So who knows where this thing could go. Recent gap up here, the gap down was around 274. It's 201. Any type of move up into that gap would be, you know, just a tremendous gain anyway. We're not looking at a stock that used to trade at $19 or a stock that used to trade at $68. But you just never know. So 3 cheap ones there. And then I want to talk about one of my best bets going into this week. Just a good quality name. I'll break it down for you. I'll show you where it's going and why it's going there. All right, just to give you an example, this is what an HPS setup looks like. It goes out to members. It's a stock that has basically everything that you need to know to trade. Your buy trigger, your profit zone, and your stop, and a little description of what I'm in it, or if I'm in it at all, and why it's set up. This is what we call a 5 to 7 day pullback, but more importantly, it is a recognizable channel with 3 important pivots: the top pivot, the bottom, and then another pivot here. We make that trend line, and we just draw this parallel trend line down here. And when the price comes down to it and makes a divergence, then we know that we're going to get a reversal back into the pattern. So this was a very key setup last week. And if you click on the click on that arrow there, the little play button, you'll see exactly what happened. We moved right back up into the channel and hit our target area. Now, I added this one back on the watch list this week. With a different pattern. It's called a continuation pattern or a flag. Whenever you have a divergence, and it's very important to learn about this divergence. Like I said, this divergence really played out well. Right back here, you can see this low and this higher low, and you had this low and this lower low, and 2 reversal candles. That really just, you know, tells us that we're going to get a nice move up, and that's a pretty decent move when we talk about, you know, a 7-point move in a week's time. Now, the HPS, you know, watch list that goes out is based off stocks moving in that 3 to 5 day range. Really wanted to move in that week range, and then we'll do research. Lots of times they take a little bit, you know, maybe they're going to run for 7, 8, 9 days. You know, sometimes some days you'll run up, pull back, and then continue to push higher. So sometimes we'll be able to put these back on the watch list just because they're still setting up on what we call a secondary buy signal. First, the primary buy signal is always a divergence, always what we call a multiple indicator setup based off, or a high probability setup based off multiple indicators, being a recognizable pattern, an understanding of divergences, and maybe a trigger, a reversal candle, and everything else that goes along with it. So that's a great example of what we're looking for. So one of our best bets this week going into the short in the week is going to be Ball Corporation, Packaging Corporation. BLL is the symbol, BLL. And again, I'll break this down for you. You can see a bunch of lines here. The first thing we're looking at is kind of a top trend line. Not really going to play out. We have a couple other pivot areas here. Pivot basically is where a stock changes direction and kind of goes through the trend. So if you have a downward move here, the pivot would actually push this stock past that downward channel. You can make a tight little channel, and the same thing here. Move up, you have another pivot here because it broke down through this tight channel. And then move down here, there's another pivot. There's a pivot here, there's a pivot here, there's some small pivots here. But the bigger ones, when they stand out, you should recognize them. You know, a good pivot's just a nice steep reversal, a nice little V bottom or V top. Good, you know, pivot's basically what it is. The price is pivoting from one direction to another direction, and those are very important to pay attention to. So we have a pivot area down here, and then we had this real big candlestick down here, and then we had a little bounce, and then a gap down, and another candlestick. And this is interesting because this is something that what I teach on divergences. We have a two-stage divergence. The first stage you make a low, and the second stage you make a lower low. But you can see this candle right here. It's actually made a real tight and real steep low here, and that is that goes actually lower. It goes much lower than the low here. So you know, technically you might not think it's divergence, but what we have also is what we call a closing bottom, or a double bottom divergence, or closing price divergence, where even though the price got down, we closed higher. So here we have a close, and here we have a lower close, and here we have a close, and here we have a lower close, but a higher stochastic level. So this does qualify as a divergence. And from that point on, we started drifting back up and hit our buy trigger, but we said we're not at our profit target yet. We still like the profit target above us. And I put this area down here because if this actually failed and came back down here, we'd come into what we call an X marks the spot, and we'd be a tremendous buy signal. I have a feeling we're actually going to pop out of here, but these are two levels. I'm in this one at this level, but I would actually, you know, wouldn't love to see it. I'd love to see this thing move up here and then move back down here. But if we did end up getting down here for any reason, I'd take this trade. This is a good area. This looks like strength, and because it's a divergence, we typically look for a breakout of the divergence back up here. So I'm not going to look for it to go down there. But just in case it does get down to this level, it'd be a great trade. Divergence here is set up, and that's the one of the best bets of the week. Now I have other ones out there. They go out to members. If you'd like more information on receiving live alerts and the live show is on every day from basically 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where I broadcast and trade live the markets, and you can watch that for free. And you can also become a member and get our dashboard, where we have all the trade alerts and all the research and all the chat rooms. We have hundreds of traders in the chat room trading together, and boy, do they make a lot of money. So hopefully I'll see you in the chat room. I'm DayTraderRockStar. I'll see you in the markets tomorrow.